Hi, and welcome to Katie's Corner in Space. My name is Katie, and today we're going to talk about Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 1, Episode 3, Ghosts of Illyria. Now, I was pretty excited about seeing this episode. As a Star Trek Enterprise fan, we met the Illyrians during Season 3, Episode 19, during some questionable circumstances, and it was a very bad first contact. Although this episode doesn't get into that at all, I was very interested to see where the Illyrians had ended up. And today I found out that there was a Illyrian colony at Hetemet 9 where things went apparently very badly. So here's my in-depth synopsis for Ghosts of Illyria. Carrying out a standing order, the Enterprise is trying to discover what happened to this now empty colony of Illyrians. An ion storm is coming, so the away team is transported away thanks to some quick thinking from Hemmer. Spock and Pike are stranded as the away team aboard Enterprise unknowingly spread a disease. While Pike and Spock take shelter in an information repository, the storm worsens and they are protected by plasma entities which seem to live in the storm. Meanwhile, on board, the light disease infects more people, though Una has fought off the disease and Uhura is spared because of her sleeping habits. We find out that Una is Illyrian and she has been modified genetically, and thanks to Chapel's quick actions after La'an attempts to get more light by overloading the warp core near Una, a cure is able to be created. And that's my whole summary. That's the short version, obviously. Let's get down into some of the grit of what happens to our heroes and what's happened to the Illyrians. I was really hoping to find out more about where they ended up, how that crew got back 100 years ago, but they don't go into it at all. We just know that Illyrians were not allowed to be part of the Federation because they believe in genetic modifications, which this colony was trying to reverse so that they could be a part of the Federation. Now, unlike most civilizations, when genetic modification was put into use for the Illyrians, it was to allow them to better adapt to their environment rather than for these people themselves to somehow become supermen and superheroes. The only other time we've really heard of genetic modification not being overused or badly used was with, again, on Star Trek Enterprise, Phlox and the Denobulans, which brings us to the funniness of the bad guy of the week. It's not a bad guy, it's a disease that could have been avoided if our doctor had gotten his upgrades during dry dock. His daughter is dying from a disease and he is hoping that during their adventures on the Enterprise he will come across a cure or something that can be modified to be a cure. Meanwhile, he has decided that rather than keeping his daughter in a stasis field of some sort, he's put her in the pattern buffer of the transporter in sickbay. This is what caused the issues while Hemmer was being his genius self and making sure that the away team was able to get enough power for a proper transport back up. The lack of upgrades are what caused the problem and give us our adventure of the week. When Dr. M'Benga admits that he has kept his daughter in the transporter buffer for quite some time, we learn that her name is Rukia and that she is dying from a disease that has no cure, and he's hoping that he will find it. And Una decides that she is going to keep the secret with him. There are a lot of secrets this episode, and I'm hoping that it doesn't bite them in the butt later on, but I have a feeling that it could. And we learn a lot about Una today. We learn that she is Illyrian, that she is genetically modified, and that she has lied to get to where she is. She tries to tell Pike that she would like to turn herself in, and Pike won't do it. He knows that she's an amazing Starfleet officer and that she has more than proven herself as a good officer, as a spectacular first officer. Turning her in, giving her up, it would not help Starfleet in any way. I am having trouble that none of Starfleet's background checks, medical checks, anything while she was enlisting or training ever turned up anything strange in her DNA, but that's part of the story, and I'm not a doctor, and this is the future, so who knows. We also got a little bit of a peek into La'an's past, a bit more maybe pre-Gorn, where she learned everything she could about her ancestor. The name is hard to ignore, and that she was treated poorly because of where she came from, not necessarily because she herself is in any way a modified human. Now, we also learned that you should never leave a genius who is not feeling well with a whole lot of buttons to push. Hemmer tries to bring up a piece of the core to get as much light as possible, and Una saves him and probably everyone else on the Enterprise as Hemmer attempts to get close and touch this 10,000 degree rolling ball of molten. Oh my gosh, it's just a bad idea. Thank goodness for Una. As Pike and Spock are still down on the planet dealing with this storm, we see these entities coming at them. And as, of course, Pike and Spock are trying to take cover, I liked the barricading of the door because that'll stop them. They get a chance to see not only these entities coming at them, but the way they react. And the fact that the entities protect the two humanoid life forms on the planet from this terrifying storm makes me think that Spock's hypothesis is absolutely correct. If those entities had been there when the Illyrians were on the planet, then in all likelihood, they would be protected, they would have survived, or at least some of them would have. So I think Spock's hypothesis that the Illyrians, possibly by their own modification, became part of the planet's atmosphere, whether on purpose or on accident, is the most logical and reasonable explanation as to where the colonists went. All the major players got a fun part in today's adventures. Ortegas saves a crew member from trying to climb into a light. Una saves Hemmer. Hemmer saves the away team. Uhura is a clue, basically, just because of her own habits. We learn more about Mbenga finally. He's been there in the background saying something clever or fun, but we really got to know him a little bit and to find out that he's a father who is trying to avoid being a father in mourning, who is fighting for his daughter's life. That's a great way to introduce a piece of information to get you to understand a character, their love for their child. It's universal. And I think that the word of the day for this episode isn't going to be exciting or incredible. It's going to be compassion. Because as everyone reveals a little bit more of themselves, the reaction from the people around them could have been vastly different. Una could have gotten dressed down by Pike. Una could have turned in Mbenga. Leanne could have decided that Una was no longer worthy of her time because she lied to her. Everybody there took the time to listen and try to understand the situation. And even though they're breaking a lot of rules, I think that at this point they're allowed to kind of use them as guides. Una has definitely proven that she is not dangerous because of her genetic modifications. And Mbenga did not mean to endanger anybody, and the backup systems can be rerouted and changed to ensure that this accident never happens again. Even the fate of the colonists. It's something that we're curious about, we're not sure about, but because Starfleet would not just leave a colony unattended and unwatched, even though they aren't Federation members, it shows that compassion is something that brings them all together. We want to know not just the mystery of what happened, but what happened to these people. Are they all right? And again, I'm pretty sure they're floating around in the sky. Whether they're all right, I couldn't tell you. So in the end, we found out quite a few secrets about our crew members. Some of them pretty darn big secrets. And it makes me wonder what other secrets might be below the surface. Each crew member has their own story, and we are just scratching the surface of who they are. So what did you think about the episode? I really liked Spock's hypothesis about what happened to them, which I know I've already said, but it's well thought out. A species that tries to create a better them to work with their environment, it seems like it would make sense that they would try to become part of the environment, or that trying to reverse the effects that they had already created within themselves could go badly and accidentally make them part of the environment. So I wish that we had gotten a little bit more in depth about what had happened to the Illyrians and if Spock is right about his hypothesis. But even more, I wish we'd gotten to know a little bit more about what the Illyrians had thought of humans in general after having been stranded 100 years ago. I know it was just one crew and one ship. Did they ever get home? Did that story ever get told? I wish we'd heard a little more about that, but that's because I'm a fan and not because we needed that in the story. I'm still questioning how they didn't know Una was genetically modified. It just doesn't quite make sense to me, but that's again me, not them in the story. I am glad that everybody seemed to be able to make up and be understanding. We would expect that from our crew, but some of them broke some pretty hefty rules, so things could have gone a little bit differently. I'm especially understanding with Mbenga and him trying to protect his daughter, save her. I do hope that we get to see more of him and her, and hopefully he'll be able to save her life. And although this show is supposed to be more of a one hit each week and then we move on, I kind of hope we come back to the Illyrians, or at least Spock's theory and what happened to them. There's just more questions I'd like us to answer. As a side note, I am digging the engineering room. I've said before, I really am enjoying the graphics on this series, but the engineering room is so expansive. It's fantastic. I liked the scenes with both Hemmer while he's trying to get the crew going, and also at the end with the warp core, Una trying to save La'an. It's a really great design, and it's fairly expansive, almost like a movie more than it is like a TV series. I'm very impressed. Overall, I would say the episode was an 8 rather than a 10, where I would have easily given the last two at least a 9.8. This one, it sort of advertised more than happened. It wasn't boring by any means. It was still an interesting, ooh, what's going to happen next? But I think I got myself excited about questions that were never going to be answered and just simply weren't even brought up. So what did you think? Was it one of the better showings? Was it a better story? Am I missing something because I, again, was looking for something that wasn't even part of the story? Do you think Pike should have been so forgiving? Do you think Una should have been so forgiving? Everybody was very forgiving and understanding about everybody's secrets, and while I'm compassionate as a viewer, kind of wondering if it's the best idea as an officer. Those are my thoughts. Those are my considerations and concerns for the episode. I really hope that you enjoyed it as well, because I did have fun watching it. It just didn't answer the questions I was hoping it would. Remember that you have the option to like and subscribe below, and also watch this video if you enjoyed this one. And I will see you again next week. Bye.